outside, and then I'm going to celebrate my son's 35th birthday today.
Nice.
Yeah, so I'm excited to hang out with them. And then I'm going to celebrate my son's 35th birthday today.
Very nice.
35 years ago, gave birth to almost 11-pound little human.
Oh, wow. Wow. Is this your firstborn?
Uh-huh.
Nice.
Yeah.
So what do you have something planned already?
I just asked if I could hang out with them. He was like, "Ma, you don't want to hang out with us." I was like, "Yes, I do. Wherever they take me, I'm going wherever they are. I'm not going to stay long, but I'm going to hang out with them. So I don't have any time between getting off from this job. I have a 2:00 appointment on Lake Avenue with a couple, and then from there I'm going to be over in that direction. And so I'll probably, when I get done with them, I'm going to go to Target and do what I do for birthdays. Who's she fussing at?
I don't know. But I don't think it's me. What she does is sometimes she'll start barking, and then when I look at her, she'll look like, oh, I was looking at the window. And so that's what she did. I don't know what her issue is today. But she was acting like it was serious.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So you got some help today, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's supposed to be 3 of us here. We'll see. So 3 of us combined. So.
Okay. Okay, cool. Yeah, I this morning I got up and went outside and I worked out, and I did some core work, right? And so I got all these yoga mats. Don't ask me why I have so many yoga mats. I got a lot of yoga mats. So I have a yoga mat that I leave outside, and I bought it, it was one of those, sometimes when you run across, well, okay, let me speak for myself. Sometimes when I run across a yoga mat, especially like if I'm at I like to walk through secondhand stores sometimes, whether they are Goodwill, Salvation Armies, or like they've got some stores that are like Jewish secondhand, whatever stores. And so
I used to be so bad about that when I had a house to put stuff in.
Well, you know what? I'm very careful because I know that I know that if I want something, like I need to get rid of something in order to get something. So I end up walking through the knick-knack area, and just I don't necessarily shop for clothes, but I do look around at other stuff. Don't ask me why. So usually what I'll do is I'll find a yoga mat, and then I look it up on my phone, and if it's like a good one, I'll buy it. And so I got yoga mats out. I must have 10 yoga mats.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, and it's crazy.
You must plan to host a class or something someday.
I don't know. It's crazy. So I have, and then I have 2 in my car, some in the basement, I got 1 outside, I got a couple up here. So wherever I go, there's a yoga mat nearby. Don't ask.
I have 2 in my car, and I think 1 down here.
Yeah.
2 in my car and 1 down here. Yeah.
I'm forever picking up yoga mats. So anyway, I put the one on the ground outside today, and I'm on the concrete, and I lay back and I'm staring up at the sky. And it's really interesting because sometimes I have this this feeling, I don't even know how to describe it, but on there was a movie that was on TV with the Archer girl, and what was that called? Something Games.
Hunger Games?
Yes, Hunger Games. And so you know how in Hunger Games you have the illusion that they are in a real world, but then the sky was like, this illusion, this electrical illusion. And so sometimes when I look up at the sky, it's almost like I'm having this interaction with it, like, and I mean, I've flown above the clouds, I'm on airplanes and stuff like that, but it's still like beyond that, like what is out there looking back at me, looking up at it. And this morning it was cloudy. And so I was having one of those experiences, like, okay, what are they doing? Is this some reprogramming stuff going on? I know it's kind of crazy, but
well, somebody was calling me the other day. Well, I think it was yesterday. It had to be yesterday, and it's interesting that you say that, because they were calling me like, yeah, they work for Blue Cross Blue Shield, and they were saying that they made Juneteenth a federal holiday, blah blah. And so Blue Cross Blue Shield closes their doors, like they're not open today, to whatever. That's Saturday, right?
Yeah, but they're celebrating it today. A lot of people have to stay off.
And so I said, well, that's interesting. I said, well, this would only be wonderful and great to me if we all decide not to spend our money. Because as far as I'm concerned, it's just a setup for us to spend our money, because we don't know nothing else to do when we're not working a job. So and as soon as I said that, he was like, wow. And I was just like, yeah, if we decide to take this weekend and not spend our money to be, to demonstrate the impact that we have, because we only free so we could spend. So if we don't spend, what an impact this weekend would be. Don't you know, when I was on the elliptical today, I saw all of these Black Friday, like these Black Day sales, the 20th and the 22nd, these super sales. I was just like, you know what? Like this is so systemic. It makes my heart sick. Like, and so I just, pray for wisdom for my community, and that we would be wise, and that we would, enjoy each other this weekend, but try to, try to do something different.
Yeah.
It's just it's always good for us, but not good for us. If you just look a little closer, like you were doing today in the clouds, it's like if you could just pierce in a little bit more and let Spirit share its truth with us. I don't know how I knew, but I just felt like, man, whatever, it's great, thank you, but
look, I'll take my 40 acres.
Yeah, how about that? Don't give me a day, give me some property. Exactly.
Oh, bro, that's the page I'm on.
Exactly. So, I was disappointed to be right in that regard. Today when I saw that, I was just like, dang it, like, oh my God, like, you're so freaking obvious, this sickening. And it's almost like, talk about the archetype of prostitution, just makes me sick to my stomach to know that reality. But
yes.
I just pray that we just kind of start to turn things around. It's like a slow, cruise ship, but so yeah, there are stuff going on. You're right. So whether they're programming us or whatever, there is something going on, and we should not sleep on it. That's for sure.
Yeah. And it amazes me, because I constantly am aware that there is so much work to be done, and the question is always, where do we jump in at? What's each of our responsibility? What's there for each and every one of us to do? And so, coming to that, it's like I get up with this, this excitement about what the day will bring, and there is also this desire to get this book done.
Yes.
Because I look at so many people. I've got this I got this friend of mine, her name is Tony, and she has quite a few books that she has written. And so when I talked to her about her book, she was like, girl, that's how I heal. That's my healing process.
Yes.
Anytime something happens to me, write a book. And she was like, so it would be nice if all this stuff didn't always happen to me, so that I needed to heal from it and move on. But she was like, but that's the reason why I have so many, which, okay, whatever works. But, I'm like, I want to get there to where I just have my first one out. And then once I get that one out, maybe it will, I don't want to call it fear, but I'll break through that barrier so that I can begin to produce. Because I have gone to, I like to go hear speakers from time to time, especially people that I find that resonates with me. And there's a man named Rocco Errico, who is out of, I don't even know where he's out of. I don't know if he's out of Atlanta or Florida or somewhere down there. But that man was pumping out books after book after book. And it was almost as if he was taking, because, he was translating, he was instrumental on translating the Bible from Aramaic, and he speaks different languages. And so he had all of this body of work that was just all his. And it was like, if I'm doing this research anyway, I might as well turn it into something. And so whether you
like when that happens, I feel like that's what this anatomy of the spirit derived from as well.
Yeah. So whether you call him, a Bible scholar or just a scholar in general, he was always pumping out and producing. And so there's something wonderful about that. Like I was, Rhonda and I was talking this morning about her writing, and she was saying, well, the person that I had editing said that this wasn't realistic. And so then we started talking about like the process, and she was like, oh, I gotta go research how that actually works, because when you're writing, it needs to be as realistic as possible. And so if you don't know or don't have the information about a certain thing, yes, you got to go and do the research, because otherwise somebody will say, that's not the way that happens, because, it's just not, it just, and so it's part the research, in part curiosity, in part sometimes I would love to just share my thinking process. But what I realized too is that I have so many things that pop up in my process that it probably wouldn't make sense to anybody else without context. So I'll just keep working. Keep working and keep writing, and just do what I do. I went to a meeting yesterday where they were talking about how to get young people back in school. And it's really interesting, some of the insights that people brought into into the conversation. And while they are not new or foreign to me, I really like that that you have places that are really looking at the whole person instead of just the parts. Because what we used to do is talk about just why people aren't showing up, or, we label them, we slap a label on them. Oh, this person is lazy, or this person doesn't apply himself, without recognizing that they have a backstory, as Rhonda would call it. And that backstory might be that they're actually homeless, or the backstory might be that, everybody in their house is strung out, or the backstory might be that they live in a powder keg, which is almost ready to explode. We don't know the backstory.
Right.
And until you really be concerned about the whole person, then what you do is you fall victim to just seeing the part that shows up in the classroom or in a facility, and not recognize that this is just a culmination of a lot of madness that they've been through. So
yeah, and that I learned that while teaching in school and dealing with behaviors in school, dominantly white school where African Americans were absolutely misunderstood, mine's included. Mm-hmm. And so that's when I became, well, I guess I also became the I hate judging type deal, that judgment, like, when you just meet somebody, you're like, what does she have on? Like, you don't know her story. Like, back up. Like, just back up. Like, it kind of bothers me, because there's so much missing information when you take things at face value and then decide to create a narrative around it. We miss so much.
Right.
Like reading the back of a book and saying, oh, I'm not interested in that, and it's just, yeah.
I'm like that too, but it's because I get judged so much. People are, I tell folks all the time about that. Don't tell me about what my age is. I am well aware of what my age is. And when I put this on, I put it on knowing that it's my age or what my age is, and I decide that I'm not going to let that mess dictate to me, nor your opinions about me dictate what I put on, where I go, with whom. If you want to hang out with your son today and he go wherever.
Yeah, we going somewhere, some little white bar, I'm sure, but I'm okay.
Yeah. It's like, just let it be, instead of always sitting up thinking about what you think about that. Oh.
Right. If I can persuade him to go to a nice place to have dinner and a couple of drinks, that would be great. But I really just want to be in his world, and I made that very clear. And so I'm ready for that. I created that. Mm-hmm. And I have to own that. I have a different opinion now, but back, he is definitely a byproduct of what I put in him. So, but it's true. It's, yeah, we don't know each other's stories, and that whole judgment thing.
And even when we think we know each other's stories, we still don't.
No.
Because sometimes what we see is just the details or the manifestation. Yeah, you don't know what's in somebody's thought system or their psyche. I'm excited about talking about this ethical energy, in part because I think what it does is it shifts. A lot of times what we do is we're concerned about how other people see us, and not nearly as concerned as we should be with how we see ourselves. And so it shifts the responsibility from performing for others, acting as if you're on a stage for others, to really recognizing that there is the observer within you that is observing itself and making decisions about itself based on what it thinks. And sometimes it's still based on the rules that are external that we are applying internally. And sometimes we're not even conscious about our own backstory.
Right.
And so all of this comes together in this second chakra. And I think that it is so good. We don't know, like, say, for instance, okay, so here, let me tell y'all this. I grew up in a family. My parents gave birth to 5 of us, right? Value was always there in our life. From the time she was like some weeks old, her mother went back to work and she brought us this little bundle of joy, who was part of our family, because for all pretense and purposes, Valia came over on Monday morning and she didn't leave until Saturday afternoon.
Okay.
Right. So she lived with us literally. And so when I tell people she's my sister, it's like, y'all don't know, right? The people don't know. So so we grew up in this house, right? And so I was a middle child, and I had what we call middle child syndrome. And this was what I used to, I don't know why, but I used to tell people that I am the ugly duckling of the family. That was the way I always referred to myself, as the ugly duckling, because while everybody in the family, as far as it appeared or seemed to my mind, everybody else in the family had something extraordinary about them. They had some kind of talent or something that they were able to do. And Sandra had none of that. Sandra was just like this. I was the wayward child. However, I will say that my older brother, Herm, even though he started off as the golden child, the oldest.
Just so I hate that term.
What, the golden child? Well, there's a lot of things that we hate, but the reason why we use the terms is because it has some meaning for us, right?
Mm.
And so, like, Herm had, he had all this talent, whether it was athletic stuff or musical stuff, or he was always making money. There was all of this stuff that was about him that was just like, they bought Herm a car. Herm was just, he was one of those people that just early on, he could do no wrong. It wasn't until later that he got caught up in drugs and all of that stuff. So, so everybody had something about them that was wonderful and special until it wasn't again, right? So, but then by contrast, they perceived me as being a favorite, which I never saw for myself. I just figured that I learned how to manage people well, but I never saw myself as a favorite. And so, it was in the context of all of that our thoughts are formed, our thinking about ourselves and our place in the world. Those things are formed. And so I was always told, Sandy, you talk too darn much. Right? That's what I heard that on a regular basis. And so sometimes I still say to myself, I talk too darn much. I mean, because I've been told that all my life. I talk too much, right? What happens in this house stays in this house. Don't go around telling this, that. I was always, right? That was part of the narrative of my life, right? In between the lines, Sandy who talks too much. So now that I'm still talking, I don't have I'm such a bad girl in talking attached to it, right? Before it was a judgment and I could not own it because I was looking at it from the context of others, the other perception of me. But when you then bring that into you, I understand me. I understand why I talk. I understand why it's a value to me now. And it took some time for me to own that piece of me. That may be true with everybody, right?
Yeah. I mean, you have to go from the family of origin into your own experience and your own identity. That has to be our experience. Otherwise, it's called being stuck. Because unfortunately, like I said, I got two chances with kids. I had one kid that I did raise like my mother raised me, that first 5-7 years of his experience. But then the second one, I had a different experience. I thought maybe I should find out who he is, because he came here determined to be his own somebody. So maybe I should just follow suit and see what this person is going to be like, But we're not educated or encouraged to do that. We are encouraged to get in alignment with the opinions of the people who love us. And oftentimes they don't take the time to get to know the little people that we are, and for whatever reasons. And so then there's something natural, I think, like the natural flow of life that requires us to decide and redesign our lives. Some people can do it right away, and then some people have to have a series of experience to say, yeah, this is not me, and let me honor who I am, whatever that is,
right.
And start to design that. And from that, I've noticed my own experience, and then the people that I work with, there's this level of peace and exhilaration in saying, this is me.
Yeah.
Look out, because here I come. This is me.
Right. Yeah, owning all of that wholehearted self. Yeah. So good morning, everybody. If I haven't said that before, today we are still in Anatomy of the Spirit by Carolyn Miss. If this is your first time joining us, or if it's your, I don't know, 100th time joining us, we're still in this second chakra of Anatomy of the Spirit. And today we are going into a section called Ethical Energy. And hey, Erica. And so I really wanted to, kind of talk about it from the sense of just that, how we see ourselves. So the second chakra, she says in here, is the ethical center of the body, while laws are connected to the first chakra, laws about the general collective, the general body, laws. This personal ethics and morals reside in the second chakra area. And so she says, communion spiritually, the sacrament of communion spiritually influences us to have a strong personal code of ethics, and drawing us into a one-to-one or one-on-one relationship, and relating and alerting us intuitively to the dangers of betraying our code of honor. So here's the thing. I remember Erica says ethical energy sounds safe and good for the day.
It does. It's perfect, actually, considering where we're going into the celebrations. Yeah, I think it's fitting.
Okay. So sounds safe. I don't know, Erica. I think that so, one of the things that I always say is one of the things that the Course in Miracles says is that I love the introduction. Let me do the introduction of A Course in Miracles. I know this is not your thing or anybody else's thing, but I love the introduction. It says, this is A Course in Miracles. I don't even know where my book is. It is a required course. Only the time you take it is voluntary. Free will does not mean that you can establish the curriculum. It means only that you can elect what you want to take at a given time. The aim of the course is not to teach the meaning of love, for that is beyond what can be taught. It does aim, however, at removing the blocks to your awareness of love's presence. The opposite of love is fear, but what is all-encompassing can have no opposites. This course can therefore be summed up very simply in this way. Nothing real can be threatened and nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. Now, I think I did that correctly. I don't know. I learned how to recite that long time ago because it was part of a guiding principle in my life for me. And one of the things that really struck me about it the first time I read that is it was saying it was a required course. And I was thinking to myself, like, required for who? And how you gonna say that this is a required course? I picked you up, right? That's what I was telling the book. I picked you up. I made a decision that I was going to embark on this course. You didn't tell me. How you gonna say it's a required course? I was having this argument, right, with a book that was not talking back to me.
Look,
but that's
in your hand.
yeah, that's the kind of craziness that I go through. Like, how you gonna tell me it's required, right? But then once you embark upon the course, what you find out is that it's just life lessons. And so it said in some place in the book, it was like, oh, you gonna learn. And it says that whether you learn through pleasure or through pain, you will learn. Mm-hmm. And so what I thought was wow, like, okay, that's how this is gonna go, right? So there's a certain set of life lessons that we all must learn, like it or not. And so I can decide if I'm gonna learn through pleasure or through pain. And so what I've noticed is it's kind of like that guy from Israel that I met who told me he was gonna get me to the altar. And then he says, it may be a bloody path, but I'm gonna get I didn't tell you about that.
You did. I don't remember that phrase, but yes, I'm like,
oh, it was going to be a bloody path there. So I saw myself being drugged by my hair or something to the altar. Like, okay, here now, all I got to do is say I do. but I was like thinking like to myself, like, okay, bet, dude, we gonna see who gonna win this one, right? So when the course says that I'm going to learn through pleasure or pain, I get to choose that. I was like thinking to myself, okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to run out and meet the lesson. I'm not going to wait. You're not going to bring the fight to me. I'm going to bring it to you. I'm going to run out and meet you so that it's not on my turf. That's the way I try to live my life. And so I find that if I live it that way and not let the lessons come to me, if I meet it and I stand in that, and I mean, there have been times where I felt like what I needed to do and the best that I could do at the moment was just simply stand, like not be so they say bloody and bowed, but I wasn't gonna be down and out. You ain't gonna catch me like that. I was like, So part of what I do and the way that I approach these lessons is like that. It is, Yeah, I'm gonna bring the fight to you. You're not gonna bring it to me. I'm not gonna learn this because I'm laying on my back trying to figure out my stuff. I'm gonna learn it, and yes, it may have that effect of like me stepping into the rink sometimes and duking it out, but I'm gonna learn it so that, yeah, I'm not trying to catch up. I always tell people, like, I ain't trying to get ready. I'm gonna be ready. I'm going to come out there and I'm gonna meet you where you are.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that stuff is, I want to say that shiggity is scary, but that's how I view this. So in preparation for this ethical stuff, yesterday I was at I was making a quick stop. I was on my way home and making a real quick stop. I looked at my time and it was like 7:53. And I was like, oh man, I need to get something from Aldi's. And Aldi's closes at 8 o'clock. So I whip into the parking lot like 5 minutes, 4 minutes until 8, right? And I'm like, I'm gonna just run in here because I gotta get some bananas. I'm on this thing where I've gotta have like people talk about an apple a day. I'm trying to eat a banana a day. And so I gotta get me some bananas. And so I run in there and I get through the door just in time. And then I guess there was all these other people who had the same idea and only one cashier open. And so now I got to stand there in the line with my bananas in line. And people, I'm going to tell you the way that I think too is that, you know, I'm an atmosphere onto myself. Your atmosphere is not going to influence my atmosphere, right? It's just one of those things. Good morning, Desmond. Haven't seen you in a couple of days. So your atmosphere is not going to cloud over my atmosphere. And so when I get in line with my bananas and the line is long because it's way back, you know, going towards the back of the store, the line is long. They only got one cashier and all the other people are busy trying to shut stuff down so that they can be ready to go as soon as this person has this line done. And so I'm standing back there and, you know, this guy gets behind me and he's up there complaining, you know, and I'm thinking to myself like, yeah, I'm going to be in my own world. So I started some music in my head, right? And I'm just, you know, so I'm not listening to all of that complaining. I don't want to hear it. Stay your 6 feet back, right?
Right.
So I'm, you know, I'm into myself. And so finally, you know, I come up, I pay for my stuff and I'm about to dart out the door. And so as I'm darting out the door after standing in that line all that time, I dart out the door only to run into some guy who is standing there. And he looks at me and he says, ma'am, can you help me out with some food? And I looked at him and okay, this ain't a judgment. This is just a description. I wanted to say, dude, you can stand to lose some weight, but I didn't say that. I didn't say that. I was like, this guy ain't looking like he missed no meals. But I looked at him and I was like, where you gonna get some food from at this time? And he says, well, we can walk down to CVS. That's my look, Stephanie. I was like, I'm not doing that like that. And I was like, sorry, I can't help you. Right. And so I go and
inside Aldi's?
Huh? I don't know. Girl, he was standing right
Where
outside
you?
the door.
Oh, you were done shopping. Okay. He wasn't
Yes.
in the line. Okay. Sorry.
Right. And so they could have closed on him. Right. He could have got there just at closing time because they did as soon as I was, you know, I'm kind of watching all of this from my spot in the line. And they did close the doors at 8 o'clock. You know, they locked the doors like, woo, and they was dancing like we done. Right. And all she got to do is get those people. And so they're pulling down the stuff over the refrigerated section and they're busy trying to straighten up the store because they look like they was trying to get out of there.
Okay.
And so he gonna tell me we could walk down to CVS. And I was like, I'm not doing that, right? So now I will say to you that I am a person that I got a one of those compasses that, you know, when I quote scripture, like when I was hungry, you fed me, right? When, you know, knocking, the door shall be open. I got all of that stuff. I'm like always thinking that I am an avenue of answered prayer. I'm thinking that and so when I told that guy I'm not doing that, it was one of those things like even as I walked away from him, I was thinking to myself, Sandra, you have just entered into a new zone. I felt like I was cutting through something like, oh, how could you say no? And I get in the car and then I'm like trying to sit there thinking to myself, okay, Sandra, you got to forgive yourself, forgive yourself, forgive yourself, forgive yourself. I was just, because girl, it was working on me.
To say no.
Saying no, that I wasn't doing that was just like I needed to go through and just I was like, you know, thinking to myself like, man, I hope somebody else blesses that dude, but then it goes back to that conversation we had the other day about when I was talking about that man paying for his son's phone bill still, right? And I recognized that as I was working through my resistance to that, I recognized that I do have some, you know, that there are some, what do I want to say? Some thoughts about, and this is mine, some thoughts about how I define the role of manhood.
I was so, my God, yes, yes, yes. That just came so up inside of me.
Yes.
Nice job, right? Yes. Nice job. Yes, yes.
I confess that, right? I know.
That's good. That's good. Okay.
And so when we're dealing with this issue of ethics, you know thyself is one. You know thyself.
I was like, I am not her therapist. I'm just going to sit here and listen.
Child, I am
her friend. We'll talk off screen.
Yes, I work on.
That's so good.
I'm so conscious of. I mean, because for me, this is the real work that.
Yes, that's yes.
So, all right.
That was good. Because I thought, like, I wonder if it was a woman, would it be different for her? Because I've heard other stories.
Yes. So
it's okay. Let it sit there.
Right.
Yeah. No, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I'll let it sit there. Right. But yes, I know this about myself. And I am so my dad was such a man's man, such a powerhouse, right? And so I have often said that what I am accustomed to is having a man who covers people, right?
Yes.
And I recognize that is not the way that everybody operates. This idea of strength, because I see women, I see people all the time who seem to have raised crippled adults. that 35 and still sleeping in mama's, in mama's house, 35 and still needing a ride wherever they go, not having a job, not, just totally still connected to that umbilical cord, getting a fix off of mama.
And if not their mother, some person that looks like her, because they haven't been nurtured by the men in their lives or empowered by the men in their lives. And what you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know, you don't know. And then there's such a system. Oh, that's just a whole nother subject. Like,
yes. And all of that is in there. I was thinking to myself, I need to watch that movie Baby Boy again. I forget what it was about, but somebody was just telling me about how powerful that was with yeah. So anyway, so I'm gonna sit that to the side. Okay. So the second chakra organs, meaning our sex organs, record all of our interactions in which we give our word to other people, make promises, commitments to them, or accept their promises. Now, I will tell you, just the other day, my little nephew, who is 9, y'all know I have had this war going on with the groundhogs in my yard. And so I set up these, that Billy Bob Bass thing that every time it detects movement, it take me to the water, kind of drop me in the, whatever, drop me in the river, all of that stuff. And so this thing goes off every time it detects motion. And so my nephew kept doing stuff to kind of activate it. And I kept telling him, boy, would you stop? Boy, would you stop? And so then he starts telling me, I didn't do anything. I'm not. And I'm sitting up there like, dude, I see you. I'm not blind. I see you doing it. And so every time he's doing something. And so then he kept saying, I promise you, I'm not doing it. And what I remembered was in that, what's her name? Ibrahim Omar is the congresswoman who is Somali Muslim. She wrote this wonderful book, and I can't think of the name of it right off the top of my head. Ilham Omar is her name. And she wrote this wonderful book, and in there she was talking about her Islam as a choice as her choice of, well, she was born into Islam, but I think that she got a new perspective of Islam when she went to visit some of her relatives who she said were very devout and very they practiced, their practice was so much more intense than her own. So I forget the word that or the terminology that we use when we talk about somebody being over the top or above and beyond, or people who walk the straight and narrow of the scriptures that they learn. And so she went to visit them, and she said her family was warning her. She was like, oh, they're devout now. When you go there, I don't know if you're going to be able to stand it, because they're going to be on you. So
like legalistic?
Basically following the rules and the tenets of the religion, right?
Okay.
Very much in line with the rules and the tenets of the religion. And so she said that she was surprised when they didn't wake her up for morning prayer. And then she said she was surprised when they didn't ask her about any of her, what she was going through, or her family members, or she was like, they weren't asking her all the questions, and she wasn't getting any of the judgment that she thought that she should be getting from them because they were so devout. And so when she had been there for a few days and she had rested and she had done all of that stuff, she finally asked one of them about this because she was trying to figure out, well, it makes me feel as if, you know, like, okay, y'all are not waking me up for prayer. I overslept. You know, she's kind of like in an apologetic way saying, I'm realizing that I'm violating some of the tenets of your house, but you guys haven't even asked me any questions, haven't said anything. And one of the things that they said to her is that not only do we not, and this is the terminology that I'm using, not only do we not sin ourselves, but we don't draw you into a situation where you have to sin by telling us a lie or by doing something that is against what you believe. And so when my nephew was telling me about he's not setting this censor off, I said to him, I said, I'm going to stop talking to you about this because I don't want to draw you into a place where you feel like you need to violate.
Yes, that's so good.
Your honesty or not be truthful. And so we need to stop talking about this, like, because I don't want you to turn around and say to me again that you're not doing what I see you're doing, because your word matters. And I thought that was such a powerful thing in the book when Ilhan was conveying about what it was that they took a responsibility upon themselves to make sure that they didn't draw her into a place where she felt compromised. And so
Paul in the New Testament talks about that when he is talking to, I think he's talking to Thomas, or he's at the church of Philippi where he talks about causing your brother to stumble.
Yes, that is that. And that's the same thing. Yes. So yeah, that for me was like how I was dealing with my nephew. And when he tried to say that I called him, he was like, you called me a liar. And I was like, I never use that word. That is not a word that you will ever hear come out of my mouth in reference to you or somebody else. Because while we do something, that does not mean that that is what we become. It is an action that we have done. If you have, I'm not going to say that because you stole a piece of candy that now you're a thief. That will not be a label that I'm going to place on you. Mm-hmm. If you told me something that is untruthful, I am not going to slap you with a label, and a label that means that you are stuck in that situation, right? If I talk too much, that I do not therefore become a blabbermouth. I said more than you thought I should say in the moment, but that does not leave me stuck in a situation. And I think sometimes that's what we do.
A lot of what we do.
Yeah. So I'm sorry. I go off on these tangents, but I'm not apologizing for it. I'm just saying I'm sorry because, you know.
What?
It's already 17 after, and I haven't even made it through a paragraph yet.
Okay, it is what it is. All right.
All right. So the second chakra organs record all of our interactions in which we give our word to other people, make promises and commitments to them, and accept their promises. And so sometimes when we hear people say, don't promise me anything, or trying to stop you from committing to something that they know full well that you are not able to keep, it is that whole idea of not letting your brother stumble, right? Not wanting to see yourself give your word or make something, commit to something that you are not able to keep. And sometimes we know in the first place you're not able to keep it, right? Mm-hmm. You know, we already know that. Don't, and so sometimes I say, don't say that. Don't say that. You know, you don't say that. Because, you know, when you tell me I'm gonna make you happy, no, I'm already happy, right? I'm already happy. Don't try to promise me something that you have absolutely no ability to control, right? Just we do that with kids all the time too, right? Don't we? We make promises to them that we, you know, and not recognizing the gravity of it, right? We make promises to them that we have, I don't want to say we don't intend to keep, but when you don't, that is a major breach. I mean, and what does that say? What does that say about about our word? What does it
The
say?
value that
Yeah.
is placed on that. Yeah.
Yes, I mean that becomes a point of contention. So a strong personal code of ethics radiates a perceptible quality of energy. And this might be one of those places where I really learned this, but I'll just go on because I know in here someplace she talks about this thing of when we're unable to even trust ourselves. And so I know that for me, that was like a shift. That meant that I needed to, if I didn't even trust myself, then I knew that the work that I needed to do was within me. And so what people respond to, is not just what you say, but the energy, the atmosphere, because your atmosphere will sometimes feel like, yeah, whatever, it'll feel like, yeah, that person is just talking. So, so this part of our biology also records the promises that we make to ourselves as let's say like New Year's resolutions, right? And other decisions to repattern certain behaviors in our lives. And so if I was telling myself for years, I want to write a book, I want to write a book, I want to write a book, right? And I'm still not writing the book. I'm still not doing what it is that I say, and I know has been something that I've wanted to do for years. If I can't trust myself to wake up and apply myself, then there is going to be a problem within this atmosphere that is Sandra. And so we have to look at the things that we say to and about ourselves, and to be about the business, because that's so powerful, right? To be about the business of doing what you say you want to do, or that what you value, or whatever. If it has to do with weight or health or any number of things, the more you talk about it and don't do it makes you, or puts you in a situation where you're causing yourself to stumble. I think that's so powerful. The physical order of which the first chakra is in charge makes us feel safe. And its laws make us feel that control exists within our environment. The ethics and morals of the second chakra provide us with a language through which we can communicate what we accept and don't accept in human relationships. So, so ethics hold enormous bonding power. We seek out the company of those who hold the same right and wrong as we do, the same sense of right and wrong that we do. When people deviate from their ethic or moral character, we often disqualify them as intimate partners or companions. Now, I was listening to before I came on here, I was listening to a record by Tracy Chapman, and I forget what
Heard that name in a long time.
Yeah, I was like thinking to myself, like, man, she did a lot of in her early on album. She did a lot of songs about just life, just the struggle of life, right? And so some of them were just so raw and just just raw, right? And so she did this one song called For My Lover. And I don't know if you guys remember this song, but she starts off the song like 2 weeks in a Virginia jail for my lover, for my lover. $20,000 bail for my lover, for my lover. And then she says, the things you won't do for love. So she goes through and she was talking about this, and we see so many people who take this type of attitude as if to say that love justifies everything. Well, for some folks, people will tell lies, will rob banks, will we've even seen people who murder and kill for their lovers, right? Do things that you would never do for love. And so this idea of having ethics or a certain energy says is that, for most people, if you've got an ethical compass of your own, it is not overridden by your lover or your pimp. I'm just saying. When you've got that strong moral compass of your own, you don't just throw it away for a particular situation. And so while we've seen that happen, people have been overridden, right? They override what they know to be right or just for any number of reasons. While we know that it happens, it's almost like there's a tear in our world. And when that tear, that rip is not repaired, then it causes, would that be where that cognitive dissonance comes in at?
Yeah, because I think that the moral compass is relative. And that has to be clearly understood, because the moral compass is relative, because we get that from our family, our tribe. It's from the tribe. What that moral compass is.
So wait a minute. So do we get it totally from our tribe, or are there things that we know?
There may be things that are intrinsically, intrinsically right from wrong. But there's a ginormous, what I thought I understood from reading this, that there is the information, the tribal information that we are bringing up from the first chakra, and that's when we are beginning to live and question what has been given to us, and that we come into our own moral compass or our ethics about life and its circumstances. So I guess I say that to say that stay in our own lane.
So
for myself,
right,
as opposed to being in somebody else's lane.
So like, say for instance, when and I hate to always take this back to race or to slavery stuff, right? But there were people who knew that no matter how much you tried to tell folks that these people didn't have souls, or that we didn't need to respect them, that they were 3/5 human, all of this stuff, there were people who knew that was a lie. Mm-hmm. And in spite of what the South was trying to say, the South was trying to maintain and keep their structure in place, there were people who were saying, you know what, I don't care.
That's good. Mm-hmm.
This is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So there were people who were working as abolitionists, even though they were trying to do it on the down low, because they recognized that the larger society was against it. Mm-hmm. But they were like, there were people who were really working and saying this is not right. And And I'm going to be held accountable.
Yes. Yeah.
So what I'm saying is that there is a part of us that knows, in spite of what
we're taught.
Yes, in spite of what our tribe says,
Mm-hmm.
we know that this is, that this ain't right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So for me, when you are going against what you know to be right and true, then that creates that disconnect within our own being.
Yes, the cognitive dissonance.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So those things, I mean, it really matters. It really matters how we show up in our own truth.
Mm-hmm. And getting clear, very, very clear about that. Like, becoming very, very clear.
Yeah. Okay, so I did 2 paragraphs. We did 2 paragraphs. So, so we're going to stop there because it is actually time for us to stop. I'm going to put a little hash mark here, and we will, this is a good section, because I think that it requires for us to be a bit more reflective about ourselves and our own thinking. Mm-hmm. And in doing so, we get to see, we get to ask ourselves questions, right? Especially when life is not going as we desire it to be, right? It becomes this question of how do I repair that rip? If I've been dishonest with my kids, if I've been dishonest in my workings, it's not so much about the other person.
Never.
Yeah, it's about how we feel about ourselves. And so you got to bring yourself into alignment
with yourself.
Yes, because that is important.
Mm-hmm. That's the personal power piece.
Yeah. If you're carrying around all of these fractured parts of yourself and not making an effort to bring it together, you will still feel that that cognitive dissonance, and you may not know what that feels like, but when you repair it, you will.
You will. Yes. And giving yourself permission to change your mind. I don't care if you, let's just use the prostitute since we're talking about that archetype. I don't care if you were a prostitute walking in the street and all of a sudden, just suddenly, like, this is no longer a good reflection of who I am. Just like that, you can change your mind and you can put the past behind you and step forward in the energy that is that movement forward. Like, just like that.
Yeah.
And whatever you have to do to stay fast to that decision, do that. Therapy, talk, whatever, read a book, I don't care. But just so you understand that we can change our mind. Just like that, suddenly I'm going to do something different.
Yeah. And you know what? And I always say, because I had one of those moments, and it was like that prodigal son moment when it says, and then he came to himself.
Yeah.
And said, whoa, I can go back home, right? Even the servants of my father's house are living better than this. And it's just that quick. You make a shift, come to yourself, you remember, and then turn around and do an about face. So if it's drugs, or if it's, any number of things that you could be caught up in, yes, you can change your mind right here, right now. An about face.
Somebody needed to hear that.
Yes.
It's true.
It is. All right, y'all. So we will be here tomorrow.
Yes.
God willing and the creek don't rise, 7:15, 7:20-ish, and we will endeavor to go on and maybe get another couple of paragraphs in and keep working our way through this. I appreciate you being here. That wasn't so bad, Erica, I hope. But you know, yes, somebody needed to hear all of that stuff that we said. And yeah, all right. So anyway, so thank you, blessings to you.
Thank you.
Have an amazing Friday.
Yes, everybody.
Yes, and we will see you tomorrow.
All right, ma'am. Thanks.
Thank you. Have an amazing day. Happy birthday to your son.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.